very exciting. I genuinely feel this would be the future of sports physiotherapy. I'm not saying that this will be entirely sports physiotherapy, but this will definitely be a big part, an essential part, crucial part of sports physiotherapy as we go ahead. Okay, and that is about the control chaos continuum. Okay, people use different names for it. Control chaos continuum. People use a word such as the chaos training and alag naam hai, but let's call it with its scientific name, which is control chaos continuum. In the last 1 year, we have been doing in the last 1 year. Can you mute them? Guys, you can mute yourself.
लगेच जाऊन येऊया म्हणजे काय ते दुकान बंद झाली तर काय तुला साडी कळणार आहे घ्यायला हा
Okay, done. Okay, can you go back? Yeah. Okay, yes. So coming back. Okay, so in the last 1 year, guys, we have been playing a bit with this concept of on-field rehabilitation. Okay, so हम लोग क्या करते थे? Every Saturday, we used to take our patients with ACL injuries who have spent or already done 6 months of rehab, people with meniscal injuries, people with rotator cuff injuries. We should take them to open ground and we used to make them do drills with us. At that time when we started this almost 1 year back, we didn't have this concept of control chaos continuum. But even at that time, we felt this was very crucial. Okay, I'm very happy that today when we actually have got words to articulate what we actually are doing. Okay, and I feel like in our minds and in our eyes, it is so crucial that the rehab should not end in the clinic. The rehab has to continue to the open spaces, to the open grounds, if we want to make sure that the athlete returns to his play safer and more surely. Okay, so that is about control chaos continuum. Next slide, Pradip. Before we dig deep into control chaos continuum, let me tell you guys that we are conducting our 7th version of Move Strong, which is going to be held in Thane this time. So all those guys who are telling that it's difficult for them to come to Ville Parle and other stuff, we don't have a reason now. Okay, it's in Thane. It's on Saturday and Sunday. It's 19th and 20th of November between 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Okay, it's fun. And आज जो बात कर रहे हैं उसका भी काफी सारा part would be covered in very much detail during the Move Strong 2 days, which will be conducted at Thane West at Positive Physiotherapy Clinic. Okay, next slide. Okay, so let's come to why control chaos continuum is important. Let's go stepwise. The first step in all of this is to understand, which we always keep on telling, is that if we look at the textbooks which we use, if we look at the word is conventional rehab. Now, when I mean conventional rehab, उसका ये मतलब कि what the rehab is given in simple words in Kisner. Okay, and which we say is conventional rehab. And what we see is that there is just an absolute lack of clarity when it comes to progressing exercises from low load to high load. Let us take an example. This we have taken literally from Kisner. Is that let us look at a case of rotator cuff repair, post-operative management of a rotator cuff repair. And if you see in the minimal protection phase, which is the last phase, okay, of rehab, what they have given exercises like TYI with dumbbells. They have given use therabands, and they have given push-ups. तो इसमें ना तो कोई clarity है और ना तो कोई clarity है about how where you start, how do you progress, how long would you do that. When I say dumbbells, मतलब क्या dumbbells, कितने dumbbells, इसमें कोई clarity नहीं है. And this is where I felt this is where there is a issue with this. Okay, and if you stop a rehab of a person with rotator cuff repair at 2 kilo dumbbells, I think you are not going to do justice to him. This person is very less likely to return to his sport. If you take a person with ACL injury on the 4th month or 5th month, he's able to do a knee extension with 5 kilo ka cuff weight, and then you stop your rehab there is a very less chance that this person will be able to return to his sport. Next slide. And that brings us to the first takeaway from today's session is that we are not loading our patients enough. Okay, we have discussed this in length. Like when we look at most of the academic colleges which we are there around us, none of us have access to weights beyond 2 kilos or 5 kilos, and that just hurts us. Because if you are really looking at people who are active, people who are in sports, and you want to bring a difference to their or trigger adaptations in their body, bring them back to sports, it's not going to happen if we are chronically underloading our patients. Okay, so that's the first takeaway from this, is that if we follow conventional rehab, you will end up majorly unloading or majorly missing the mark for loading the patient optimally. Okay, next slide. So इसी के लिए it was important to understand कि the loads which your athlete comes across in sports, okay, during athletic movements, and the loads which we put him on him during rehab, उसमें बहुत बड़ा difference है, बहुत बड़ा gap आ जाता है, and that is a gap which we today are talking about. How do we fill in that gap? And now this gap is happening because athletic movements are happening at far greater intensities, greater forces, greater mobility demands than your rehab exercises and rehab movements. Okay, most of these movements are happening in tri-planes. They're not happening in two planes. Okay, so they're happening in multi-planes. Multiple muscles are acting at the same time. They're acting at a high intensity and they're acting at super speeds. So it's like if we do therapy exercises, if we do example 2 kg dumbbells, we are not able to mimic the loads which will be required during athletic movements. And that's the reason why even if our patient passes the rehab, he might not be safe when he returns to his play. And that's the reason why, next slide, Pradnya, okay, is that there is, this is what we said, there is a huge gap. There exists a huge gap between loads created conventional rehab and demands of the athletic movements. Okay, next slide. And and that's why we always talk about something like the Move Strong workshop, jahan pe we discuss a lot about what should happen when the rehab ends, the typical rehab ends, and you take them towards how do you initiate strength exercises, how do you add on weights to them, how much weights to add on them, how do you progress strength exercises to explosive exercises, how do you create competency in run, throw, and jump, how do you take them towards drills for footwork, agility, and COD, and you create a robust athlete. So this is the first step. Like once your conventional rehab is over, the first step is doing good strength and conditioning with him so that you are able to create a robust athlete. Next slide. Okay, so this is a model. This is the pyramid which we always talk about. Is that exactly what I just spoke about? Is that at the bottom of the pyramid is that a person should be able to do good quality movements, clean movements. What we say is movement competency. Okay, we cannot start loading a squat unless you have a ability to do a full depth squat with good mechanics. If wo jagah pe hai, then you start loading the squat. You don't have a good mechanism doing a deadlift, you can't start loading the deadlift. Once the mechanics is there, consistency is there, you start making this exercise into strength exercises. And as we discuss, we progress into further things. Next slide. I'm sorry, guys. Okay. Camera change.
Are we highlighted?
Yeah, we are highlighted. Camera change. Sorry guys, there was a phone, so I had missed the correction. Okay, so that brings us towards creating a robust athlete. Okay, is that once your conventional rehab is done, you take him to the process of strength development, power development. You go towards the other things as you go ahead. Okay, fair enough. Next slide, Pradnya. And this is where we were. This is where we were very happy. Maybe probably 6 months back or 7 months back, we were thinking, okay, conventional rehab ho gaya. We'll do good strength and conditioning, we'll learn strength and conditioning, and we can. That brings us more. We like the athlete will definitely return to his sport. But that is when we had another realization is that no, you cannot because when we do strength and conditioning, जब हम लोग power explosive exercise कर रहे हैं या agility drills कर रहे हैं या COD drills कर रहे हैं, you have to understand that all of these are happening in a controlled environment. Most of the time, you should do these exercises in the clinic. Okay, so but when they go out, like he would be able to do a good deep back squat in the clinic. We tell him to go to his sport and do jumping. Okay, that used to be a little bit of there was an element of assumption. Okay, my training of back squat is going to help him run faster and is going to help him jump higher when he gets back to train. Okay, या जो वो box jump क्या कहते हैं clinic में कर रहा है, that is going to translate into doing a header when he's playing football. But ऐसे नहीं होता because there are lots of things which are happening. Athletic movements are different from controlled movement. If you see athletic movements, they are unstructured. Okay, आपका task and environmental conditions बदलते रहते हैं. Okay, so it's not like when I'm doing a header, I'm thinking about how I jump, how I move my hand, and how I land. Okay, my major thing here would be about heading or reaching the ball. Okay, there will be a lot of noise around me. People are screaming in my ears. Okay, I'm thinking about something else. I'm not thinking about how I jump or how I land when I'm doing this. So it is difficult. You have to understand that a training which happens in the clinic, which happens in the gym, may not translate into success on the pitch because our training has yet not reached here. Okay, athletic movements are unanticipated. जब हम लोग क्लिनिक में या जिम में या एसएनसी स्टूडियो में उनसे एक्सरसाइज करवाते हैं, we tell them कि you have to do 10 back squats, then you have to go and do 5 push-ups, then you have to go and do 10 deadlifts, जो भी रहेगा. But when they are on field, they are going to, if you look at football, they are going to run in different directions, they are going to different challenges, they are going to run, they are going to change directions, they are going to sprint, they are going to stop, change direction, they are going to jump and do a header, they will run back. So the movements are very क्या कहते हैं unanticipated, they are sudden and they're unpredictable movements which are happening, and our exercises are absolutely predictable and absolutely structured. Okay, the third thing is they are very jumbled. Okay, jumbled matlab it's like suddenly I'm jumping, suddenly I'm running, then in the next 1 minute I'm running. Okay, so it is jumbled. Like it's like even if I create a CrossFit protocol, I would say I will do 5 jumps and then I will do 10 skipping and then I will do 10 squats. But up sports mein dekhoge, it will be a 1 jump, run, 1 jump, run, you fall down, you get up, change of direction. So the things, though what you have to understand, athletic movements, apart from being at high intensity, at high force in multiple directions, athletic movements are also highly unstructured, highly unanticipated, and highly jumbled. And the exercises which we do as physiotherapists and the exercise which we do if we have learned strength and conditioning are absolutely controlled. Okay, so neither rehab exercises, neither strength and conditioning exercises are actually addressing this problem. Next slide. This probably is the most क्या कहते हैं, the most hit point of the takeaway point from our presentation is that yes, strength and conditioning is essential. But guys, it is not enough. If you understand athletic movements better, if you try to think about sports better, if you really want your players to return to their sport safely and surely, you cannot even end at strength and conditioning. There has to be something more than strength and conditioning, something more which makes the exercise, the experience closer to reality as much as possible. Next one. Yeah, and that is where we talk about on pitch stage training of athletic movements. So let me tell you, there are athletic movements. There are 3 main primary athletic movements: the run, throw, and jump. Swim is another category, but I have kept it there. So run, throw, and jump are the 4 main athletic movements. Now then you इनको आप subdivide करोगे then you have something like we should be able to understand the athletic movements which happen in football, in badminton, in cricket fast bowling, in table tennis, sab jagah pe. So if you are a good sports therapist, you need to know what are the movements happening, on-field movements happening when they are playing this sport. Like for example, in football, there are few basic movements which are happening, which are something like receiving and passing, receiving and crossing, dribbling. It will be tackling. It will be shooting. It will be heading. So ये हुए आपके these movements come together to create what you experience as football. Okay, and this needs to be practiced on field or on pitch in a staged manner. So today what we are discussing, what is control chaos rehabilitation, is nothing but once you finish your conventional rehabilitation, once you have taken him through the process of strength and conditioning, you have reached certain competency in strength and conditioning. He is very good with his controlled environment exercises. You are now taking him to a ground. You are now taking him to open space. You are now taking him to a turf, and you are going to start training athletic movements in a graded manner. Okay, so we'll now hear Priya more about the 5 stages of control chaos training.
Okay, so guys, we are going to start with understanding what is this control chaos continuum model that we are talking about. Firstly, we have to understand, like as sir just mentioned, that we came out of the conventional rehab and then we are progressing towards the strength and conditioning aspect. But we still realize that when the athletes are getting back to their sports, the demand of the sports are not really catered with the conventional rehab and the strength and conditioning, right? So that is when we as a team felt the need, that there is still something more missing, and of course we are trying to explore more and more, and that's how we came across this understanding of entire control chaos continuum. Okay, now I want to give you a brief up about how did we come across this. There is this author Taberner. Okay, we are going to talk mostly all the things that we're talking today now is coming from the insights of his work. All right. Whatever he has done in his training and how he's helping the injured athletes get back to their sports, okay, so that they not only play well, but they minimize the risk of injuries, okay. And that is what we're going to shed light upon when we talk as and when we go ahead, all right. So the chaos control model, control chaos model is nothing but what you are trying to do is, first of all, shifting the athlete from a clinical setup, okay, or a gym setup to a pitch. Okay, so it is an all pitch rehabilitation. Okay, this helps the athlete in 2 ways. Okay, firstly, it creates the confidence which the athlete needs, whether are they really ready to play the sport that they want to. Okay, after 8 months of crucial good rehab which is done with them. Okay, the confidence starts coming back. Secondly, when they start going back to the field, the movements which were difficult to them, which they thought they might not be able to do, are they getting the confidence of doing those movements on the injured leg as well or not? That is, the clear understanding about that can only come when they are on pitch. So control chaos model is highly pitch based. Okay, you cannot recreate it in the clinic. So remember, you have to be on the pitch with the athlete. Okay. Now, before I make you understand what are those 5 phases, I want to clear certain things. All right. First of all, when you are doing this training with them, you have to understand, that there is a you have to understand that there is a overlap between your SNC training, okay, and your on-pitch rehabilitation. So, for example, if you have taught your athlete, say that they should know how to jump or something in their strength training, you are going to reciprocate that movement again while they will be on the pitch, because as sir just mentioned, all your sports comprises of some technical skills. So if I consider football has one element of heading, okay, which also involves a jump. So that is the reason that you have to train them for a jump in the clinical setup, but also use it when they are going to be on the pitch, right? So that is, we have to understand a lot of concepts of the strength and conditioning will be used when they are on the pitch. Okay. Second point, you have to get the involvement of the coach over here, all right? Because as we know that now it is getting very, very technical, and it might be a possibility that we ourselves might not have the correct way of letting them train those movements. We should be aware of those movements. How is a dribbling done? How is tackling done? How is passing done? Crossing done? Okay, but it is the coach's domain to perform or to help the athlete do these movements again. So you need to be there with the athlete to understand how is their injured leg responding, injured knee responding to those forces. Okay, and that's why your role becomes important on the on-pitch rehabilitation. Okay. Third thing, this model itself is quite new. Okay, it is emerging. It has been done with football. Okay, there are coaches, there are sports scientists who are paying attention, who are trying to understand how can they reciprocate such drills for the footballers, all right, so that they have better return to play, right? But at the same time, there are other sports also, like there's badminton and n number of sports where you would want to create a chaos control training program. And I think we physios have a wide door open here where we start understanding how to integrate chaos control model in different types of sports. Okay. The next point is, see, whatever we're going to talk right now is our interpretation of the entire continuum. Okay. And we try to shed light on exactly what we have understood through this entire model. Okay. So before I start, let's understand what is chaos control model. Okay. So, what we are doing is basically creating constraints, which could be either task oriented. Okay. That means if I am giving them a drill to make their running speed better, I would ask them to tempo down. Okay. Maybe they have to run fast, run slow, run with intervals, run with maybe some change of direction drill. So I'm trying to create constraints in my tasks. All right. Or I can create constraints in my environment. So I can start with a short distance, okay, maybe somewhere in my balcony, to going on a pitch, going on a high, a larger land and performing the same skill. So that is how you're creating a environmental constraint. Okay, this is done so that to challenge the athlete not only physically but physiologically and neural adaptations also, so that this can minimize the risk of injuries in those athletes. Okay, so that is what is control chaos model all about. Okay, in that we are now going to start talking about the first phase, which is your high control phase. Okay, now in the high control phase, let's take an example of a football match, okay, or a football game. Say about there's an athlete who has been injured while playing football. Okay, and he has undergone an ACL reconstruction, and now he has finished 6 months of conventional and strength and conditioning rehab, and now he wants to get back to his sport, right? So here, what we are going to start is, of course, on-pitch rehabilitation with the first phase, which is going to focus more and more on running. Okay, now if you understand the football as a sport itself, it has mainly comprising of two main things. First is a very technical thing, which is your running, okay, and the other things are very tactic specific, okay, which are including your different types of skills involved in football. So sir just mentioned about that, but I'll just brief up again on that. Okay, so you have something called as passing. Okay, that is when they are receiving the ball and they're going to kick the ball. Okay, then there is after passing there's crossing. Again, it is a similar movement but with higher impact and in the air. Okay, that is the second thing. Then comes your say about shooting, okay, where they're going towards the goalpost. All right. Then there is something called as your heading, landing, jumping. And landing and jumping is already something which they cover in their strength and conditioning, right? After that, once these things are at place, then they can get it more complex and start involving things like tackling and stuff like that. So this is in about what is football all about, right? So when we understand that there are two aims that we can keep for the athlete. One is a physical aim, which focuses more on the running, and then there is a drill aim, which focuses more on these skills. Okay. So coming back to the first thing, which is your high control phase. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So running, the high control phase is nothing but very running specific, and here we introduce a drill which will help them run at 60% of their maximum speed. Okay. Now, if you know the thing is like many a times when we're talking about elite level athletes, they are always censored. Their variabilities are checked, so they have GPS systems and stuff like that, and they have previous data itself, which tells them what was their exact body mechanics and their capacities, like with respect to running, strength, and everything, which is already stored. And the coach or the athlete or the sports scientist can decide upon how much do they have to use of that. But we might not have such data with us, so you have to make them understand what would be the 100%, what would be the 50% or 60%, and at what speed are they supposed to run. If they still do not understand that, okay, it might be a possibility. So you can actually pace yourself along with them when they are running, so that they have better understanding of what speed they have to keep and they have to continue the run. All right. So this happens for about, say, you can start increasing the time gradually. So maybe they can start with something as small as 3 to 5 minutes, because if you consider the game of the football, the first half at least is of 45 minutes. So you have to understand that you have to spend some time on each phase. The first phase could be starting with as low as 3 to 5 minutes of run and gradually increase to something like where they're running for about 80 to 90% of their maximum speed in the later on stages. So that's the first goal of the high control phase. Okay. The second thing that you can talk about in the same phase is about how you train them for static jumps. Okay, so a very important sports specific movement is your counter movement jump, right? And that is what you also train, because as we said, this is also required while doing heading and stuff like that. Can also be trained in the same phase. Okay. So yeah, so here I have.
I'm visible now. Yeah. So we basically do counter motion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 3 once more. Good. Yeah.
Okay, so that is your counter movement jump. Okay, you can ask questions to the athlete like, how confident are you feeling when you're doing this jump? Okay, and you get a better idea about how we can train them further to improve their jump if required. Okay, so this is your high control phase. Okay, this is mainly done to introduce the athlete back to the pitch. That is number one. Second, to gain the confidence, for the athlete to understand, that he can cope up the demands which could be required down the line. Okay, so it's very helpful to gain the player's confidence, right? And that is why we start with something as simple yet very effective, something like a running drill or counter movement jumps. Okay, once this phase is done, we move on to the second phase, which is a moderate control phase. Now, so now we're going to start with something called as a moderate control phase. Now, if you understand what do you mean by control? Control means, you are telling the athlete exactly what he has to perform, for how much time he has to perform, what would be the constraints, whether it would be a task constraint, environmental constraint. But now when we start moving from the high control phase to the moderate control phase, the limitations would start getting less and less. Okay, because we want to eventually get them back to their sport, right? So here, the first thing is, if I talk with running perspective, the speed of the maximum speed running which they are doing would now shift from 60% to say about 75 to 80% of their maximum speed, right? They can do the same training. Okay, they can just run around the field or something like that, but at higher intensity. Okay, and for higher duration, something like that. Okay, again, you can keep that thing in mind that the game is going to be for 45 minutes. Maybe if they have started with something like 3 minutes, they can here now start getting to 15 minutes or something like that. Okay, so that's one thing. Second thing, now you also start getting football game specific. So you start introducing very small drills, okay, which would be like, when they are running, okay, yeah. I'll just show you guys, yeah. So I can, so supposingly you are here, okay, if the player is here, he has to run from point A to point B, okay, and I will be keeping cones in between, right? He has to complete the entire run with dribbling of the ball. Okay, so he's having constant change of directions over here, and he has to complete the entire run. Okay, that is one way of looking at moderate control. Second, what we introduce over here is change of direction drills. Okay, so in change of direction drills, we start integrating drills which are either sagittal plane, okay, or they are frontal plane. Now, in sagittal plane, there are two types of drills, that is acceleration and deceleration drill, okay, which I would want Yuvraj sir to demonstrate for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me speak. Okay, so guys, in acceleration and deceleration, we this is again a bit of this can be happening along with SNC. जब हम लोग कर रहे हैं, okay. So first we train for deceleration, then we train for acceleration. In deceleration, you just make them start and stop at a point. Okay, so you start from one point and you are going to stop at point B with the affected leg and with the unaffected leg. Okay, this again happen in the, as we discussed, in the sagittal plane. In the same way, it can happen in the 3, 2, 1 in the front leg. Okay, stop with the affected leg and stop with the unaffected leg. Okay, so you can do acceleration as well as deceleration things with them. Okay, that way. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is how your moderate control phase would look like. Okay, so basically what you're trying to do is do some agility drills with them, change of directional drills with them. Okay, you can also on the pitch, and secondly, you can also start introducing ball as and when required to make it a little bit more game specific. Okay, so that's your moderate control phase. Now there is a transition from the control phase to the chaotic phase. Okay, now it actually starts getting pretty game specific. Okay, you are going to have loads of at least 50% of what is required on the pitch. Okay, while playing the football match. So if your game is for half matches for like 45 minutes, you are at least playing for 25 minutes minimum, so that you kind of have the same training demands which slowly starts getting into picture when you're playing on the pitch. Okay, and your confidence actually gets better with this. So here, what I can start with is certain things which are going to be very much football specific. So supposedly, I have drawn a
Unanticipated movements is what is coming.
Yeah. So here, first thing is first of all, they will not know that what kind of movement is going to happen here. Okay, so it's an unanticipated movement. Yeah. Okay, they don't know where the ball will come from, where they will have to kick, where they will have to shoot, and that's what this phase comprises of. So I have a chart ready over here which talks about, so if this is player A, okay, and this is the coach. Now if the coach starts throwing ball, okay, kicking the ball in different directions, the athlete starts sprinting towards the ball, okay, sprinting towards the ball, receives the ball, and then shoots towards the goalpost, something like that. Okay, and this is what a control to chaos drill would look like. Okay, so this is your stage 3, right? So you can decide, or you can, with the help of your coach, have different ways of creating different drills with different tactical skills demand of the football game, and create a lot of drills. Okay, the only constraint which you keep here is because they have just been introduced to that, keep the distances between the goalposts and stuff like that little less. Okay, so keep it low. So even if they are kicking, it should be something like within the low speed or something like that. Okay, perfect. So now we go towards the moderate chaos phase. Okay, now moderate chaos phase is nothing but, now of course it's unanticipated movements. Okay, secondly, it's going to be at 75% of your training loads. Okay, and it's going to get very much football specific. You can also include maybe 1 or 2 players with them who are not helping them much, but with the passing and stuff like that. Okay, so again, you can create different types of drills with the help of your coach. Okay, and you can go ahead. So again, I would like to show you one more drill which we have drawn here. Okay, so supposedly there are three players, player 1, player 2, and player 3. Okay, now player 1 is injured. All right, now player 2 is injured. Sorry. Now if player 1 is passing the ball to player 2 and player 2 is passing the ball to player 3. Okay, at the same time there might be a coach here who's introducing a ball over here. Okay, a different ball. Now the injured athlete actually has to sprint. Okay, receive the ball and then shoot. So he was not actually aware that there is a ball which is going to be introduced in and between the game. Okay, and this is how you can create unanticipated movements for the athlete, and which will help them to start getting more and more chaotic while performing such drills. Okay, so that's your moderate chaotic phase. Okay, and then comes your last phase, which is your highly chaotic phase. Okay, and this is where things get very very demanding, challenging. You're not aware about what movements can happen. Okay, the environmental constraint is actually what is challenged the most over here, because you increase the size of the pitch. So if you see these side drills which I showed you right now, they were happening in a very small spaces. Okay, of the pitch. But now you can actually create the entire game sort of environment with, of course, lesser number of players, but with higher distances. All right, where they are shooting, passing the ball with higher capacities and stuff like that. So that is what your last phase, that is your highly chaotic phase, would look like. Okay, here I hand over to Dr. Yuvraj sir again.
Next slide, Pradna. So before we have Atharva with us, and before we go to Atharva, let me finish this PPT so we can then stop the shakes this thing. Okay. So one thing is that as we saw the 5 stages of chaos, control to chaos, one thing which is the take home is that A is that this is happening on pitch, it's not happening in clinic or in a studio. Okay. B is that you are increasing the variability in the task, you are increasing the variability in the environment to make it more game specific. Okay. Initially, there are no unanticipated movements, but as you go ahead, the unanticipated movements are increasing. Initially, the loads are low, but as you go ahead, the loads are getting higher in terms of intensity, in terms of the physiological demands also. Okay. Initially, you are not playing against anyone, but as you go ahead, as we Priya discussed, there will be 1 or 2 people around you who are going to be there to pass you the ball or to tackle you or something like that. So this is basically, if you see nothing, it is just a kind of graded exposure to go from the clinic or the gym back to the back to the play. Okay, now once you have crossed level 5, that is when you can start discussing about is he absolutely safe to return to play. So one thing which we have realized here, guys, is that there will be a lot of blurring of boundaries which is now going to happen between the role of physio, the role of a SNC coach, and the role of a fitness coach as we go ahead. And this is welcome change, I would say. This is not essentially a bad thing. Okay, because finally the goal of sports science is to help the athlete to return. So in earlier, the physio will do his job, leave it aside for the SNC coach to take on later on. We all have to work together to ensure the player returns to the sport as early and as safely as possible. Okay, respect the expertise. Okay, and work as a team. This is very crucial. Okay, so yes, I don't know how do I train for, like we did a kind of control chaos training for a few of our patients with ACL last Saturday. We don't know how do you train for receiving and passing, but we had one patient who was kind of good at football. So we took him along with us and we told him, you teach this to them. Okay, so there was a lot of learning which happened for us also. And the players who were there were football players who were injured, were really benefiting from that. So there could be some things which you can do on this line. A good rapport with the coach is something which is very, very crucial, which happens here. But as sports physios, I feel that as we take the player ahead, we should be aware. We should absolutely be aware of the athletic movements which he or she is going to encounter when he returns to his sports, and we should be able to design a program which takes him from control towards chaos. Next slide, Pradip. Okay. Oh, so that is it. So basically, the entire intention of this presentation is to tell you that on-pitch graded training of athletic movements is going to be the future. As Priya said, this is just a new field. We are discussing football. A lot has been done in football. Atharva will tell us a little bit more about where it began. But there are so many other sports where I feel these principles can be used. we are not yet we are not done that. So it's a big area, guys. Like could there be a control chaos training center for cricket fast bowling? Could there be a control chaos training center for return to play for badminton? Could there be an expert in control chaos training return to sport for uh, table tennis, for football or something else? Okay, so this could be there. These are ideas, these are thought bubbles which you can think about, because this is where I think the future will definitely lie. Pratna, can you make Atharva part of this, so we can ask some questions to Atharva also?
He's already there. I'll
Can
stop
you
the share.
yeah, can you just stop this sharing the PPT, and can you maybe highlight Atharva? I will ask question.
Hello guys. Hello. Good
Hi
evening.
Atharva. Yeah. Yes, good to meet you, Atharva. Guys, Atharva is our friend, first and foremost. Okay, we know Atharva since the last 5-6 years, Atharva, right? Now.
Yeah.
And Atharva is currently the head fitness coach of Chennai FC. So we are very lucky to get some ideas from him. Okay, and Atharva was the person who introduced me to control chaos. So during one of our discussions, he mentioned this. We were just reading into it, but this is the guy who is actually using control chaos model, who has seen it used at professional levels. So yeah, Priya wants to ask some questions to Atharva. Yeah.
Hi, Atharva.
Hello.
So, I want to ask you a few questions. Firstly, can you tell me about Tabanar a little bit? How did he actually start with such a work of introducing an on-pitch rehabilitation with the help of this model? So, if you could shed some light there.
Yeah. So this area of basically return to play or getting a player back to full fitness or match fitness from injury has been studied a lot, especially in the UK, and I can only tell from my experiences in football that it was a question mark, that because there was no structured or periodized program regarding return to play. Usually the physio used to do the basic level 1 rehab, level 2 rehab, and then used to give the player to the coach and you get on with it. You basically start from low loads. He joins the team training as usual, but he does little, then he joins little bit more. So there was no structure. It was all based on more feedback from the player himself, which is also an important part which we haven't discussed during the whole presentation. How much important the player feedback is for the whole process. Because you might have some players who are mentally and physically a little bit tough. They can endure pain, or their motivation is so high that they will progress through stages just so that they can be back on the pitch. So player feedback is one thing which we didn't discuss, but is highly important, that you keep getting feedback from your player. How you're feeling, how is the running doing, or you need more, you need less, can we progress to this stage? That is one thing you need to keep in mind, because the player knows, especially at the elite level, because they know what their match fitness, how they feel when they are match fit and how they feel when they are unfit. They know it inside out. They know their bodies. So especially when you're dealing with elite athletes, feedback is very, very important. And coming back to Dr. Matt Taberner, who is basically, he started this research when he was, if I'm not mistaken, at Aston Villa, which is like a Premier League club, and he worked there as a rehabilitation specialist. So he was only focusing on rehab. His background is he's a licensed coach, so there is an element of he knows his coaching and he knows his football. So when you're designing training plans, revolving football drills and everything, you need to know a little bit of the actual coaching part and not just the training loads. And academically, he is a accredited sports scientist. He has done his PhD, he has done his master's, bachelor's. So academically and knowledge-wise, he's up there with the best. So he started this research when he was at Aston Villa, and it has progressed through the years. Like the study which you have highlighted in the presentation, I think that was with Everton, which is another Premier League club. And with him, there's another sports scientist called Dr. Tom Allen, who's at Arsenal. He also has been at the forefront in terms of promoting this part of research of getting players back from injuries into match plays.
So
More
Agar,
question? Yeah.
it seems like you are actually using this model a lot with your athletes, especially who are injured and getting back to their sport. So how useful is this? When you are trying to train them back or get them back to the sport, like how has your experience been with this entire thing?
So we use this a lot because it's now like a staple way of working, especially when you're getting an athlete back from injury in football. At least it's well known. That's what all clubs do. That's what all sports scientists do. That's what all physios do, for that matter. So in terms of what we do at Chennai, we have a very good medical and physio team, and we have a good coaching team as well who understand the demands, and basically it requires a little bit of patience as well, because they want the player, especially when you're working with elite players and professional sport. Games don't wait for you. Games will come and you need to be there to help the team to win. So there is that aspect of pressure as well from the coaching and also like the management part of the club. So we have a very patient and understanding coaching and medical department. And in terms of like day to day, if we take the example of injured athletes, the what we showed in the presentation, the first two stages, that's where the physio usually takes over. So he takes care of the strength and conditioning and part of the linear running speeds and running drills. And when you mentioned like 60%, somebody had asked 60%. Like, yeah, we usually tell the athlete himself, he knows what a 60% of a sprint is. So if you tell him that, he has enough clues to judge his speed. So it doesn't have to be like 60%. So for example, somebody's maximum speed is 30 kilometers an hour. So it doesn't need to be like 16 kilometers an hour. It can be 15, it can be 14. Like I say, you have to take feedback from the players. If he thinks he can push a little bit more, he will go more. And so coming back to what we do, so the first two stages, that's where the physio takes over. And when it comes to more ball work or technical part, that's where I come into the picture, where I take the athlete over, and we just build on what the physio and the strength and conditioning specialists we have. Obviously myself in the strength and conditioning department. So both of us sit down and we work out a plan how to get him first energy systems wise fit. So what I mean by energy systems is your aerobic, anaerobic energy systems, ATP, PC, all that stuff. So it's important before we build to more fatiguing drills, that is aerobic base is built. So that is done through these first two stages. And once he progresses through those, we use more stimulus related stuff. So for example, like reacting to certain cues or reacting to certain things which are going on. It won't affect him, but it should affect his movements. So for example, what we do just before the high chaos phase that we start to gradually introduce him to non-contact activities. So by non-contact, I mean that he won't be tackled or he won't be pushed. So there is no contact as such. So it's a relatively safe part of training which he can join, which can be a first part like a warm-up, or he can join in the technical passing side where there's no contact as such. And once he progresses through that, we slowly introduce him. Like one thing which we do is, for example, if there's a game going on, we put a bib on the injured player and we tell the whole team. So the whole team knows that they don't need to tackle him, but it's still helpful for the injured athlete because there is still things going around in his periphery that he needs to be aware of before taking a certain action or before doing a certain movement. Because what you also highlighted in one of the slides is basically your movement pattern. You need to build your movement pattern before you go on to your first stage of running and the first stage of rehab. After the first stage of rehab, sorry. So one thing which affects movement is also fatigue. So when you're fatigued, your movements become slightly altered because you're fatigued. So we need to also take in mind that, like I said, aerobic and anaerobic base needs to be built before we take him into these activities. Because if he's not fit, you can do any sorts of passing drill. After a while, he's going to get tired and his movement is going to be compromised, which can lead to which can probably set him back from his injury. So we need to also make sure that energy systems wise he's fit before we progress him through the stages. And also one thing, like we've discussed a lot about football because the article is based on football, so we gave a lot of football specific drills, but the continuum as such is very specific to different sports. So for example, in a football game, if you see, there's lots of chaos. There's 22 players on the pitch and any player can affect a person's movement on the ball. So opposition players want to take the ball from him, your players want to score the goal. So there's lots of stimulus attached to a game. Whereas, for example, in a sport like badminton or tennis, there is only one stimuli, which is your opponent who's in front of you. So chaos can be defined in a different way for each sport. So it doesn't have to be restricted to these 5 or 6 stages where you have to progress through these. Because, for example, for a tennis player, it can be frequency of shots he takes, or frequency of service he does, frequency of forehands, backhands, the lot. So it highly depends on the sport the athlete is playing, and this is where you have to have good as physios, especially because you are very restricted in terms of what you can do after you've made him strength wise and energy systems wise fit. The next step will be for him to start doing sport specific activities, and that you need to take the coach on board, because there is that limitation that if you don't know the sport, you cannot plan a tennis. So for example, my background is not in tennis. If you give me an athlete in tennis, I'll have to speak with his coach. I have to study the sport as such. And so it depends on different sports where you're using this continuum, when you're using this continuum. And so yeah, one of the things which benefits us a lot, because we have, being a professional team, we have that devices with us, is the GPS. So we know that before injury, what the player used to run during games, what was his load throughout a typical week during the season. So for example, if you play Saturday and you play again on Wednesday, your training loads are completely different, because your training loads as such go down because you need to just recover between games, but your overall load can go up because you're playing 2 games in a week. And it obviously changes if you're playing from Saturday to Saturday. So with the help of GPS, we know how much sprints he's doing during the week, how much sprints he's doing during training, how much distance is covering during the game and during like a typical week. So in terms of other sports, you will have to be creative in this aspect to monitor this part of the training load. So like I said, a very basic would be number of shots a tennis player or a badminton player takes. So this is where you need to know the sport in order to plan the training program or the rehab program.
Really insightful, Atharva. I remember we talking this almost 7-8 months back, and it took us 4 or 5 months to actually understand what is going on. But now I can link what we were trying to do when we used to take our patients to Prabodhan Thakare, and we used to try to make them like what we are trying to do, or what we were calling as late stage rehabilitation, was a kind of trying to introduce control to chaos training for them. So I think my experience, I would say now, is the basic thing what we can start doing as physios is if we are dealing with sports athletes, we are rehabilitating them, is to understand what are the athletic movements they are going to encounter. Okay, that is first thing. B is that once their SNC part is almost complete, okay, literally book a turf. That is what we do. We don't have a big clinic. So what we do is we book a turf. It hardly costs 500, 700 rupees for an hour. Okay, book a turf, gather 3-4 people who are your sports clients and take them together to that turf. This will be wonderful, because the moment you go there, you start realizing so many things which has you never realize in the clinic. Like Atharva said, last Saturday we found a guy who was really poor at his stamina, in simple words. Okay,
Yeah.
and that was probably going to be the limitation which is going to have as he go it. Like rather than it being the pain or the range of motion or the strength, it is his physiological capacity was just not there. But we don't realize that when he's with us in the clinic. So yeah, so that one thing which we all can start is identify people or active individuals. They need not be elite. Understand? They don't be elite. Okay, they might not be able to spend enough time or enough money on all the stages as we discussed. Okay, maybe they don't have that kind of motivation, but you can discuss it with them. So what we discussed, if you have a player, you can ask him, do you have a good buddy with you who can come with you to the open ground? Okay, can you first, when you go to the open ground, can you just first start practicing running at 60% of your max speed? Okay, B is that, can you now just put cones and start doing some drills? We used to send him some YouTube videos of the drills, start doing those. Okay, B is that the same drills, but now using a football, carry a football along with you as you're doing the drills. Third stage would be take a buddy with you, okay, and you can, or there are like that the game which football mein khelte, jahan pe there is a circle and you have to pass the ball to each other. That could be the third part of it. Fourth part would be there is a person in front of you and you have to ensure you don't pass the ball till it goes to the samne wala person. And then as it goes ahead, increase the intensity of passing, crossing, running, okay, jumping, increase it, do the same thing from short distance, mid distance, and long distance, and keep on talking to the player. Are you having any issues with pain, with mobility, with balance, with wobbliness in your knee, or with are you getting excessively tired doing this? Because maybe if you hear them out, maybe they have tried this and they get back to you. This is where you can treat them better. So neither are we at present doing this day in day out, but we are giving them good homeworks. That is what we are doing. So that they can go, and then they can get back to us after a week's time and tell us, you know what, I did this, but when I was shuffling towards my left side, I was not confident. Shuffling towards the right side, I was confident. Now this gives me as physiotherapist some ideas in what is going to be my next goal in terms of his rehabilitation.
Because when you're dealing with, for example, recreational athletes, is very you are governed by constraints. There are different obstacles, disadvantages, and it also depends on like the motivation of the actual patient. If he wants to get back to football, if he's injured if he had an ACL while playing football, does he actually want to go back to playing football? So for us, it's in professional football or professional sport, this part is kind of, I wouldn't say easy, but it's straightforward. You know what the end goal is and you know how to get there. So in terms of when you're dealing for you guys, especially physiotherapists who are in a clinical setting, it's difficult to do or follow these 5 or 6 stages.
What I have seen otherwise in the weekend athletes, okay, is that very few actually return to football. That is very few, 50% or less than 50% actually return to football. They might get back to football, but they are not playing at the same intensity or with the same pleasure which they used to play earlier. So
I think and also with that level of athletes, the best thing you can do is to just get them fit, aerobically and anaerobically. That's that's the most you can do for them. Changes of direction, yes, you can do stuff with the ball, but if you're fit energy system wise, the body kind of takes it looks after itself basically.
Nice one. Any question, guys? We take 1 or 2 questions. You can type the questions in. Yeah, we will discuss that Prathamesh in a separate thing. Yeah, cool. Okay, so guys, the entire intention, like it's a very banal thing, but what I would say is that the thing is the discussion in sports physiotherapy. I genuinely, because I was a part of Sports Physiotherapy Institute and Priya was a sports physiotherapy student, not that far away, is that it has to change, guys. It has to change. Sports, as Atharva was discussing about GPS tracking, they're looking at max speeds. They're looking
another thing, actually, sorry, we didn't cover is nutrition. If you are injured and you can't move, you can't do anything, the best thing at least you can do is to maintain your weight.
Nutrition,
because the moment you gain weight,
Yeah,
It's very
not-
difficult to again then
Again
even
get back.
run at linear speeds
Yeah.
or linear straight lines.
Very true. Yeah. So yeah. So what I was saying was yeah. So the discussion within our community, guys, has to move from the very minor things. Yeah, very minor things such as I don't know. Yeah, yeah. Range of motion and things because cupping and needling and taping and sports taping, which are good, guys, but it is not going to, because what way sports science headed, we should be aware of what is happening and how we can now contribute or create value in that chain. Okay, that this is where I feel is where our profession should be headed towards. How can I create more value so that I can pass the patient more surely to the SNC coach, work with the SNC coach, pass the player to the fitness coach, so that he is able to return to his training as safely and thing as possible. At the same time, you have to understand you are everything when the person is a weekend athlete. You are the SNC coach, you are the physio, you are the fitness coach, you are everything. Okay, so यहाँ पे what max can you do is something which I think it's important, because if he doesn't get back to his sport, he is missing out on a lifetime of being active. Okay, he will give it up. Yeah, so it's very crucial. It's imperative that we get him back to sport as much as possible. That success from 50% should go towards 70, 80, 90% even for weekend athletes. That is the goal. Yeah, great. Okay, I hope you liked the thing, guys. Thank you so much, Atharva, for finding
No problem.
time. Atharva was traveling today, and he still
Yeah, I
got
just
good
reached
enough
Kolkata, reached
Yeah.
Chennai from
Yeah, when is the
Kolkata.
next match, Atharva?
Next match is on the 12th against
wonderful.
Mumbai City FC.
Oh, thank you so much, Atharva, for finding time. Okay, and
No
we would
problem.
like to keep on joining us in the Nerd Squad. as
Yes.
moderators. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So much.
Hopefully
Thank
next
you so
time
much, guys.
with some data to
Yes,
bring
yes,
you
yeah,
GPS data, so you can actually see what
Yeah.
it is like to
Next time,
perform
even I
stages.
hope we are also on an on-field thing rather than in a clinic. Yeah. So
Yeah,
let's hope that happens very soon. Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, guys, for being there. Any questions, messages to us? I'll share the articles with you, and I will share the presentation also with you. Stay in touch, and let's keep discussing relevant things with you. Bye, guys.
See you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.